people, especially women of color, immigrants, and other equity-deserving professionals, when they're not aware of the discrepancy in pay with their peers, they're just at a disadvantage, even more so than, all of the other kind of reasons. So, for example, it makes it harder for us to negotiate our compensation, to move up in our careers, to change jobs, and of course, also for our self-esteem, or security and ability to provide for ourselves and our loved ones. It's important for me because I like to see how people that I follow on LinkedIn, how they progress in their careers. And I didn't have many role models that looked like me growing up in terms of like a professional space that I was really interested in. And so I hope that by being transparent with my own salary progression, hoping that it keeps increasing, that I can be a role model to other people.
Hey friends, welcome to Public Health Careers. I'm Omari Richards, founder of the Public Health Millennial and host of Public Health Careers. Join us as we dive deep into public health topics and career journeys. You'll hear diverse career stories, absorb professional development and career strategies to help you learn, navigate, and transform your public health journey. On today's episode, we have Sally Yue Lin, MPH. Sally is a self-employed career coach and consultant. She also works as a senior manager with the Policing and Security Branch in the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General with the BC Public Service. She's someone who has over a decade of experience in public health and public safety policy. She's passionate about creating positive social change through evidence-based and equity-driven practices. She conferred a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and Anthropology at McGill University, then a Master of Public Health at the University of British Columbia. In today's episode, you'll hear and learn more about her advice to work before pursuing higher education, to earn money and gain clarity on your career path before jumping in, how she got to and does work at the intersection of public health, policy, harm reduction, and policing for the BC Public Service, why she advocates for pay equity and salary transparency by sharing her salary journey openly on her LinkedIn profile, and how she supports Black, Indigenous, people of color, and people in equity-deserving groups with career coaching as a means to drive forward health equity, and much, much more. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and enjoy today's episode.
Hey, this is Sally Lin. I'm a public servant and career coach, and you're listening to Public Health Careers.
Sally, I'm excited to hear more about your story and about the insights that you have. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Yeah, pleasure is mine. So to jump into things, how do you identify and tell us a little about your personal background?
Yeah, so I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a queer Asian Canadian woman. I am calling in today from the unceded traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, colonially known as Vancouver, BC. I immigrated to Canada when I was 8 years old, hence the kind of lack of accent, or I guess I have a Canadian accent probably. And I've lived on the territories of many other indigenous nations, too many to kind of say in this interview, but the Cree, the Inuit, and the Lekwungen peoples, especially, I spent very memorable parts of my life. Outside of work, I have lots of different hobbies. I kind of flow from one to the other, but my main one right now is I'm really into biking. I have been for a long time, especially bike packing, which is essentially like backcountry camping, but with your bike. And I think it's a lot of fun. I've met a lot of other people who also think it's a lot of fun. And I spend a large portion of my income now on bike stuff. So maybe it's a bit of a problem as well.
That's just a personality piece. So yeah, I've never heard about bike packing before. So is it that like you have a bike and you're like going around camping as well as like backpacking, but with a bike instead of like walking?
Yeah, that's essentially it. You have all your stuff that you could possibly need attached to your bike in various ways, various bags, which is where some of the expense gets in there. You have to buy the bags. And then, you're basically just whatever you need, food and tents and stuff is on your bike. And then you get to wherever you're camping and then you set up and you kind of go from there. Some people will kind of stay indoors as well, so you don't need to camp necessarily, but it's a bit of a debate within the bikepacking community. Do you have to camp or count if you are not? So
Fair enough. It's a big debate, and I think it warrants the arguments on both sides.
Yeah.
And so shifting a little bit here, you are the first person I've seen on LinkedIn post your salary like as part of your profile. So like why is
Mhm.
that important to you?
Yeah, so I think salary transparency and pay equity, it's super important to me because I have firsthand experience of kind of the negative impacts when um, organizations are not open about salaries, or just it's very difficult when you're starting out and you don't really know what you're worth or what to charge. So I've personally had some experience, but I've also seen the impacts of it on my career coaching clients now, friends, family, and basically. Um, I think when people, especially women of color, immigrants, and other equity deserving professionals, when they're not aware of the discrepancy in pay with their peers, they're just at a disadvantage, even more so than, all of the other kind of reasons. So, for example, it makes it harder for us to negotiate our compensation, to move up in our careers, to change jobs, and of course, also for our self-esteem, or security and ability to provide for ourselves and our loved ones. Yeah, it's important for me because I like to see how people that I follow on LinkedIn, how they progress in their careers. And I didn't have many role models that looked like me growing up in terms of like a professional space that I was really interested in. And so I hope that by being transparent with my own salary progression, hoping that it keeps increasing, that I can be a role model to other people, or they can kind of see like, oh, okay, this is kind of for this type of job what you would get paid in Canada or in this specific context. Yeah.
I think it's a very important topic because oftentimes we have no idea where pay falls for people unless we literally talk to them. And then it's really hard. It's a hard conversation to have oftentimes, I guess,
Yeah.
somewhat like taboo to kind of have that conversation. But the
Yeah.
importance of knowing that information can really help you, as you said, like in the negotiation process and things like
Mhm.
that. So,
Yeah.
so I'm guessing like you knew all of these things, but what was the maybe the moment that made you decide, okay, I'm gonna actually put this on LinkedIn and like share this with people and use that as a strategy to talk more about pay transparency and equity.
Yeah, so I think the main thing, there are kind of two things. So one was I briefly worked for the Gender Equity Office within the BC government, and I helped to develop the Pay Transparency Act that's now in force. The great thing is there's a lot of legislation, and in the U.S. as well. As part of my job, I had to look into the U.S. of course, and there's lots of places that are doing that. And then BC very recently put this legislation into force. And so within that job, I learned a lot about the disproportionate impacts on particular groups of people, whether it's because of their gender, sexual orientation, gender presentation, all of the different identities. So that really, brought it home for me in a kind of more intellectual, like structured way. And then also I have to credit someone that I follow on LinkedIn, who I've never met or anything, but her name is Lee Allison Clark, for the idea, because she basically did that for each of her jobs on LinkedIn. And I think for similar reasons, she had a post about it. And I was like, that happened at the same time. I saw that when I was in that job. And so it gave me the confidence to also take the leap and to just say, if there's more of us kind of doing this, then, other people might get more comfortable. And it's just super empowering to kind of see like, oh, okay, this is kind of what we're playing with. And obviously compensation, financial compensation is only part of it. There's lots of other things at play, but it just gives a rough idea. Yeah.
Right. And it always starts with someone or some people. So I think it's important to, just realize that there's an issue and say, okay, this is the way that I can do my part in kind of breaking down this big momentous issue. So I appreciate you doing that. And it has made me more thoughtful about me also putting my own up there as well. So maybe that will be something that I do in the near future as well.
Yeah.
And then you are a career coach for Black, Indigenous, and people of color and people in equity deserving groups. Firstly, why would someone need a career coach?
Yeah, that's a great question. So One way I try to think about it is similar to other types of coaches. So, you mentioned you play soccer, so you like to watch sports. So especially sports coaches, that's something to kind of like frame this conversation in. A career coach is the person in your corner that can push you, can support you, and hold you accountable to your goals, whatever it may be that you need. And a career coach can be many different things, depending on where you are in your career or what you're specifically looking for at a given time. So can be a tailored approach to a job search, a major career transition, or exploring possible paths. So I think anybody who wants to take their careers to the next level should consider working with a career coach. I have done so at various points in my career, and it's been super, super helpful. You don't need to work with them for forever and ever. It can be in kind of spurts, because obviously there is a financial and a time cost. But again, going back to the sports analogy, is if you think of yourself as like a rising tennis star or whatever sport you like to watch, and you want to go pro, would you consider doing that without a coach? Probably not, right? And so while friends and family are important sources of support and guidance, sometimes the last person you want career advice from is from your parent or your romantic partner, or someone who have a stake in the game, and you want someone who have the skills, they're professional, who have your best interests at heart, but is not necessarily personally impacted by whether you take a job or not. You want that kind of objective but caring perspective.
And what was your first foray into like not being a career coach, but getting career coach? Because many times when I do speak to career coaches, it is a process of, okay, first I've been coached and I've seen the value in that, and now I want to do it. So like, what was your experience in getting coached? Like, why did you want to do it, and what was that benefit that you got?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a program that my a friend and colleague of mine told me about. The name is escaping me right now because they changed their name, so it makes it kind of hard when organizations do that, but I can find it later. So basically, she told me about this program where if you're kind of like a rising kind of young female professional at like an early to mid career stage, working in like a social impact field, then you can apply for this program. It's quite an intensive application process. I had to make a video, which I'm never that comfortable making a video, but I was like, I'm going to do it and answer a bunch of questions. And then you get a subsidized rate. So you still do pay, but it's way cheaper and way more financially accessible than if you were to just work with the coach at their regular rate. And you get to work with them for a period of time. I think it was about maybe 6 months, and you kind of, or there's a certain period of time. And so that was amazing. It was at a point where I was making a job transition and just making a lot of kind of different decisions. And it just really, the structure of it helped. And obviously the work that we did together was super amazing. So that was kind of my introduction to it, and just really got me thinking. I had actually already started something like this in terms of being a career coach, but between my main job and my career coaching, it just really accelerated it. So I was like, well, this is really great.
And why was becoming a career coach for others something that was important to you?
Yeah, so this goes even further back. I guess in my undergrad, I was a peer tutor. I think that was my title at the time, but it was a volunteer position, and that was kind of my first introduction. I just wanted to I love volunteering. I think if I ever can kind of be independently wealthy or retire, like I just volunteer all the time. I'd be like one of those ladies, like constantly volunteering. So as part of my undergrad, I was doing various volunteer things, and one of the things I did was to be, like a peer mentor, peer tutor to other students. I really liked that, but the biggest piece for me was during my master's. I worked pretty much all through my master's except for the first semester, and just was living in Vancouver, very expensive city, just needed money. And one of the jobs was being a peer tutor for students with additional learning needs through the Center for Accessibility at the university that I was at, which is University of British Columbia. And so it was a great job, and I did get paid for it and was working with different students, and just really loved that experience. I had to leave the job because I was no longer a student, and you have to be a student to get that job. And then I also volunteered with my alumni association. So especially during the pandemic, they were having virtual sessions with students and kind of new grads about resumes and cover letters. And so I was doing that with other volunteers. Really like that. And then again, I was wanting to kind of do more volunteering. And so I put out a call on LinkedIn to be like, who wants to, me to mentor them? And so I had a few people reach out and really enjoyed that experience. So that was kind of over the course of maybe like just under maybe about a decade, like all of that. And then about 3 years ago, I thought, okay, there's really a need for this. I've been doing this in relatively a volunteer capacity, but wanting to kind of make it into something that I had kind of more control over and something that I could learn and experiment with. So that was kind of how I created this coaching service.
And you also have like a focus on those specific groups I mentioned, so Black, Indigenous, people of color, and people in equity deserving groups. Why is it important for you to focus your work on those groups specifically?
Yeah, so obviously anyone who works can benefit from a career coach, and there are tons out there. Lots of really wonderful coaches. But for me, I really wanted to focus on equity deserving professionals, which is a very broad definition, and I know that there's lots of different intersecting identities, and there's a lot of nuance there. Because I've seen through, again, my own personal experience in terms of the identities I occupy, and also in a hiring role, and when I worked on different teams and the very many jobs I've had over the last 12 years, that there are at different points various inequities that exist, or just advantages and disadvantages that different candidates have. And I really do see that emerging in when I've been in a hiring role, despite everyone's best efforts. It's just there are some inherent inequities, systemic ones. And so I think oftentimes for BIPOC or equity deserving folks, they may not have friends or family that can teach them about the unspoken rules of the workplace, or they don't want to burden their family with their work kind of troubles, if you will, or they might be supporting family members financially or otherwise, emotional support. And so maybe the urgency of their job search affects more than just them. There might be many other people who are impacted. And so, it's super important for me to take an equity approach in my work, both my main job and also with this. And I think for now, this is the best way for me to impact change and kind of challenge those inequities in the workplace from kind of a different, more one-on-one approach. And it's something that I also really enjoy. I learn a lot from my clients. I learn about so I hear sometimes really hard stories that I have been privileged to not experience myself, but it keeps me humble. I think it feeds back into my main job, where it makes me a better leader, a better coworker, a better friend, just a better person, hopefully. Yeah.
And what are some of the common challenges and maybe solutions that some of the clients and people that you work with have?
Yeah. So obviously every single client has such different challenges, but generally the kind of three main categories I'd say would be something like, help me find a job in this X time frame, or I need a job or a full-time job, something like that, like a fairly straightforward process of, I need a job now. And then another one would be, should I go back to school or should I go to school or do some type of training that is a big time and money investment? So that's another kind of category. And then another one would be, I want to make a big change in my career, or something. I'm working in a toxic work environment and I need to change maybe my whole industry or job or location. Like, help me think that through. So I'd say those are kind of the three main categories that people generally tend to fall within.
So we heard a lot about the work that you're doing as a career coach and stuff like that, but I'd love to hear more about what does public health mean to you before we get more into your story. So what does public health mean to you?
Yeah, so this is actually such a hard question because public health is so broad, right? You've talked to more people in this field than I have, so you would know even better. But I think for me, public health is striving for equity in all aspects of health and well-being for the whole population. So it can be equitable access to healthcare services, information about healthcare decisions, government policies that address some of the systemic challenges. But yeah, it can be so many things, and there's so many tools that you can use to impact change, which is why I think obviously biased. I think it's such a cool field to work in because you can use different tools, but towards hopefully the same or similar goals. So you can never really get bored. And it's one of the reasons why I chose it was because I saw the potential in terms of my own career. Like I can work in all sorts of different ways and learn different tools and meet different people, it's very interdisciplinary. And so it's everything.
Before we get back to the show, are you passionate about public health and looking to elevate your career, brand, and impact? Join the public health community today. Gain exclusive access to career-boosting events, connect with like-minded professionals, and stay ahead with the latest trends in public health. Plus, enjoy mentorship and career support to help you thrive. You'll even learn tips and tricks on how I grew my LinkedIn by 2,000 followers in the last 6 weeks. Sign up before the end of May to lock in your membership at the current rate before prices go up. Don't miss out on this opportunity to grow and connect. Join us at thephmillennial.com/join or in the link in the description and be part of our vibrant community dedicated to making a difference in public health. Let's build a stronger future together. Now back to the show.
It's everything.
Yes, it absolutely is everything. I appreciate that definition and perspective. So you got your Bachelor of Arts in Psychology and Anthropology at McGill University. Talk us through that thought process going into undergrad.
Yeah, so thinking back to undergrad, so I think we had to pick a major after first year, something like that, and I was having a really hard time deciding because I took a bunch of random courses and just to bring astrology into this, my sun sign is a Gemini, so I'm notoriously bad at making decisions and very thinking about two different things. But I basically looked at my transcript after first semester or first year, and I basically picked the two classes where I had the highest grades, and it was like Psychology 100 or 101, something like that, and this prehistoric archaeology class. I was in the anthropology department where we learned about Neanderthals and stuff. And I thought, okay, I did well in these two and you can pick a double major. So I was like, okay, why not? So literally that's how I decided. Yeah, I think it worked out okay.
Well, I'm glad that it worked out okay. And definitely is good to play into some of the strengths that you have and then develop more into that. So while you were in undergrad, you had I think a couple internships here. So you were an intern at the Association for India's Development Internship and a health policy research intern. So can you tell us a little about those experiences?
Yeah, so I think they were definitely the highlight of my undergrad. Courses were great, but internship is really where you have to apply your skills. So both of them were really important to me for different reasons. The internship that I did in India was I was based in Chennai in Tamil Nadu, which is in southeastern India. Super vibrant city next to the ocean with really good food, really rich history. So I was really lucky to have been able to get that internship through my faculty. The Faculty of Arts had an internship program, so they had the relationship built with the organization, and they also had a small scholarship that helped to offset some of the costs of the internship. And for that, I worked on this dietary survey project with mothers in rural villages outside of the city. It was a really interesting challenge for me at the time. I never really developed a survey, and in terms of conducting it, we were going into these different villages, and I was working with another staff member who spoke Tamil, going all over the place. And I learned a lot. I think the main thing that I learned was that I didn't necessarily want to work in a global health context unless I was an invited expert in the field. I felt really out of my depth and feeling kind of like an awkwardness with the kind of colonial power dynamics of, I was an undergrad student and I was leading this thing. And so it really made me think a lot about the power dynamics that exist and when you're working in a kind of international context. And the other position was with the Institute for Health and Social Policy, which was at my undergrad within my undergrad university at McGill, and it was in my last semester. So I had some friends who did this internship before and also during that same semester, and I had they had a really good experience, and so I applied and was lucky enough to be chosen. And there was also a stipend that came with that, which was helpful, really important. And so I worked on this health economics project, looking at medications, the cost of medications, and the best part of this internship, besides also getting paid, was meeting some of the other amazing interns, some of whom are doing like really cool things. I have some of them on LinkedIn, and you try not to compare yourself, but you're like, oh wow, look at how good they're doing. And it also kind of made me realize like health economics, not my thing, and that's important to just know like, what you're not into, so you can narrow it down. Respect to health economists, just not my forte and not my interest.
Yeah, understood. Health economics is one of the tough classes for me in my MPH. The modeling and all that kind of stuff.
I just didn't even take that class. Like I avoided it.
No, but to that point, it is really important to get those experiences and just figure it out, because you would never know about the global, like what global health looks like and what that makes you feel in that space. Without that experience, you'd never know about health economics, and like that is not for you. That's why I think it's so important to get those experiences. And what were some undergrad takeaways that you wanted to share?
I think the main ones from undergrad, or what that experience was like for me, was I really learned a lot about myself and how I study best, and the conditions under which I learn or work the best. Because I think maybe like many other people, like high school was really easy for me. Like I barely studied and did well, but then undergrad hit, and you're like, oh wow, I really actually need to figure this out. So through much trial and error, I did, and a lot of that learning I carried that into my master's and now into work as well. I also did learn a lot of really important theories and various information and knowledge from my courses, much of which are still applicable to my work today and my personal life as well. So I do feel really grateful for that. When I was learning it, there were times where I was like, well, when am I ever going to use this? But it does pay off to pay attention in classes, and especially the theories, like the foundational stuff. It does come back. They're foundational for a reason. So that was money well spent in the end.
That's good to hear. And after undergrad, you moved on to become a program coordinator at the University of British Columbia, or UBC. How do you come across that, and what do you do in that position?
Yeah, so I came across this job because, so right after undergrad, the last semester of my undergrad was hard, I have to say, and I really feel for, now when I work with clients who are kind of in that phase, like I really tell them like it's really challenging, and what a big transition. And so I did try to apply for jobs to have it lined up, but I just couldn't find anything, didn't have anything lined up, and so I basically over the summer I applied to like over 50 jobs in kind of like a month and a bit, and I found this job through the University of British Columbia's job site, and I basically that summer I had 3 interviews from those 50 plus applications and 2 job offers, and so this was one of them, and I am so glad I accepted it. This was pivotal. Like looking back now, it's been over 10 years since I've been in that job, and it really took me down the trajectory that I am on now. So I was hired to be a program coordinator for a medical elective for family medicine residents, who then get paired with a psychiatrist in either a jail or prison or some sort of specialized kind of criminal court in the Lower Mainland, in the Vancouver area. But because we didn't have actually that many residents that were interested in this program, it's pretty niche. I also helped out with the community-based participatory research programs it was with the Center for Excellence in Prison Health and Education. So they were doing some research, and so I got to work on that, and we were working directly with and for people with incarceration experience. And so it was just huge for me. I learned, it was, a ton of stuff in just that 1 year. And it also really cemented for me that, I did want to do a master's in public health. And pretty quickly I realized that. And so I was able to kind of apply and get in for the year after. Yeah.
And how did public health come up for you? Because you did bachelor's in psychology, anthropology, and I'd imagine that a lot of the work is in like public health realm of spaces, but many times we don't hear about like public health. So how did that come up for you?
Yeah. During my undergrad, I ended up by the end taking mostly health psychology and medical anthropology classes, which is how I got introduced to the field of public health. I think it was one of my kind of friends in one of the classes who was kind of saying like, yeah, I want to study public health, and I was like, oh, what's that? And kind of looked into it. And then in my last semester, especially after that internship with the Institute for Health and Social Policy, I decided, yeah, this is my goal, and I'm gonna work for maybe a year or two and get some work experience and get some money. Because I was already working at UBC with that job in prison health, I applied there. I liked living in Vancouver, and I was also expanding my professional network here through the job. But I also applied to Simon Fraser University, the other kind of big university in the Lower Mainland area, the University of Toronto, and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. I got into all except the London School, and actually I was in London for vacation a few weeks ago, and I went to the campus and I stood in front. I went like as far into the building as I could, and was just kind of like feeling a bit. I don't know what the emotion was, but like, oh, imagine if I came here, my life would be so different. But it's fine. It's a very competitive, prestigious program. So
Yeah, we can only look back and reflect on it. We can't change. You can only move forward.
yeah, exactly.
So you pursued a Master's of Public Health at the University of British Columbia. Was it that because you said that you had the plan from undergrad to get the Master's of Public Health, you just wanted to get experience. So I guess to that point, was getting that experience before applying helpful and useful for you?
So helpful. In fact, again, yeah, not to be like, oh, all my regrets, because I definitely have none in terms of my career, but the job I had was funded for 2 years. And there's a part of me that kind of wish I just worked for 2 years before going into my program, because even just that 1 year that I worked, it gave me just so much practical experience and context, right? Like and network. Like I definitely expanded my network in that job. And so I think with the benefit of hindsight, there was no real rush for me to go immediate, like even, yeah, definitely not immediately, but even a year felt like too short. A couple of years would have been nice. And I say this too because as soon as I got into the program, there were other people in my cohort who had either worked for a lot longer, or they were actually currently working and doing this while they were working full time. And that's when I kind of thought like, oh yeah, like there is no real rush. But again, no regrets. It's just something to reflect on. Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes sense. But I think it is always something when you are able to take your time and not rush to get into a master's program, because to that point you just gain so much experience and like real life um I guess experiences that you can actually apply to the theories and the things that you're learning in class. So there is a lot of value to be said if you're able to work before going into an MPH and then also work throughout an MPH program.
Yeah.
And while you were at UBC doing your MPH, you were a student public health officer at the Public Health Agency of Canada. You were a program coordinator, peer tutor, graduate teaching assistant at UBC, as well as a research assistant for the Momentum Health Study, and a research coordinator for CHIOS and Watch for the BC Center for Excellence in HIV and AIDS.
Yeah, so the last position actually I was right after I graduated. So the project coordinator for the research studies there were after. But yeah, during my master's, again, I live in Vancouver. It's just a very expensive city, so you definitely need to work, I think, or most people do, to kind of fund just being here. But also, I realized again, how important it is to get that work experience. And there are a lot of opportunities when you're in school that are only available to students, right? They kind of protect that. And so I took full advantage of that. I was one of those people that actually read the listservs that the departmental staff would send out with the job opportunities, and yeah, would just kind of apply and worked as much as I kind of can handle while I was still in school. And the practicum I had to do, that was a requirement as part of the program. So that one I did over the first summer, like between first year and second year. And it was amazing. It's another pivotal, I mean, probably all my jobs are kind of foundational to where I am now, arguably, but that one was huge eye-opening experience. It was with the Department of Health up in Nunavut, which is one of the northern territories of Canada. And it's the Arctic and kind of that remote and rural health is something that I've always been really interested in. And so this opportunity, I actually knew about this program when I was an undergrad, and I emailed them and they said, oh, it's only for grad students, like come back and apply when you're a grad student. So, a couple years passed and I was a grad student. I was like, oh, I'm applying for this. And yeah, I managed to get it. It was a paid position. I'm just such a proponent of paid internships. I think unpaid internships really just should not exist because you're basically baking in inequities by doing that. Not everyone can do that. So this one was paid, and it was paid for the Public Health Agency of Canada. And up until recently, it was my highest paid job because they kind of layer all this stuff on top of it, like Northern Allowance, this and that. And so it ended up being well, you can see on my LinkedIn how much I got paid per hour for that job, but it was great. I made a lot of money that summer. There wasn't a lot of places to spend it. But in terms of the work itself, I got exposed to just the biggest range of things. I was ostensibly up there to work on this influenza immunization program, but then they also gave me this other project looking at HPV schedules. And then there was a garbage dump fire in town. So there was like an environmental hazard that we were all living in. And so there was like environmental health. And then there was also Ebola was happening at that time. So even though we were so far away from that possibility, we still had to prepare for it. So within the summer, I got to do everything from Ebola to influenza to environmental health stuff. So it was such a great experience. And yeah, I think the other jobs too contributed in different ways. The peer tutor piece I kind of already talked about in terms of how that influenced my career coaching service. Yeah.
And what was that like? Did you say you were in Nunavut during the summertime?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask if you were there during the winter time. What was that experience like? But I could even imagine that in the summertime, it probably is pretty interesting of a place to be in.
It's such a cool place. I actually did go up there in the winter because I had friends up there, and so I ended up returning, for fun. And I think in that calendar year, I was there for both summer and winter solstice. Obviously, literally complete opposite. So, summer solstice, it was like the sun basically just never really went down. There was a big bonfire, big party. It was everyone's kind of just so excited. And then the winter solstice, yeah, just like the sun never really quite came up. But the summer was great there. I have always tried to, whenever I go anywhere, whether it's, to work or even to visit, to try to get immersed in kind of the local culture. And there was lots going on. Summer's a really exciting time. I was volunteering. I, again, love volunteering. And so in my spare time, I was helping out with this arts festival that was going on. And there was this, soup kitchen that was there. And so made lots of good friends, some of whom are still up there, some of whom have left. And yeah, it's just a very special place in the world, and also a place that have a lot of health challenges too. So there's always work up there if I ever decide to go back.
Yeah. I reflect on my time when I was in Alaska, and I didn't get to go up to Barrow. I'm not too sure what the native name is for it right now, but they basically the most northernmost part in America, essentially, and very, very rural, very desolate, but a lot of like rich culture, and people have been living there, so it's fascinating in that sense. And I could only imagine the kind of richness in the work that you get to do, and that opportunity would have been probably really awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
That's cool. So were there any like big takeaways from your MPH program as a whole?
Yeah, so by that point, I had kind of figured out for the most part how to study and how I worked. Of course, I kind of kept refining it, but the main thing from my master's was just really realizing the like how to focus my energy. And even though, I tried to do well in courses and all of that, I actually spent more time trying to get work experience, meet people, like really just expand my professional network. Because I understood that even though I was getting, very tangible, it's a very applied program, obviously, really tangible skills. Because I wasn't planning on doing further education, the actual grade didn't really matter as much. Like I got good grades because I am a massive nerd. And also when you're interested in something, you tend to do better, generally speaking, not always. But if there was, an event or even like a party with my other members of my cohort versus studying more, honestly, I always picked the social thing. Because I like to have fun, but also it's like I want to get to know these people. Like this will be my community. This will be my network. And it's so true. A lot of the people that I got to know either super well or not even that well have now become part of my extended professional network, my peer network. Some of them are their careers are taking off, so I can't even call myself their peer. They're definitely surpassing. But it's great because, that's what is that horrible phrase? Like your network is your net worth. I hate that, but it's true, right? It really is. And like I learned really good skills in my courses, but a lot of that information gets dated very quickly. Some of it I never use, like a lot of the epi skills. I realized same with health economics, not my jam. And so I don't even put those skills on my resume anymore. It's just not true. I can't really do that anymore. So that's something I tell my clients as well. Like, especially for professional masters, it's important to, just to think about where you're investing your time and energy.
I can agree with that more because, as you said, like they're going to be the people that are in the field with you, that are leading different things, going to be sharing opportunities, could potentially speak your name in there, so that there's a lot of value. And as well as MPH programs go by so quickly, so it is really, don't get caught up in all of the things. Ensure that you're doing ways to enrich yourself.
Yeah.
And then I believe immediately after your MPH program, you became a self-employed public health consultant. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the timelines, just to kind of clarify. So I was working in that, project coordinator role with the 2 research studies while I was doing kind of a little bit of consulting on the side. So it kind of came about. I was with a friend who was in the program at the same time. We approached one of the presenters at one of the courses that we were taking in our final semester, and we were basically just saying, like, have you done an evaluation of this or something to that effect? And he was like, no, do you want to do it? And we were like, okay. So we basically quickly created this business together and to take on that contract. And then there were, a little bit of other work involved. But I have to say it didn't last super long in terms of me doing that at the same time as a main job, because it's a lot, right? I was in my first job after my master's. It was full on, really busy job, and then trying to create this thing on the side. I definitely bit off more than I could chew, but I also didn't want to say no to an opportunity. So I did do a little bit of, like consulting and just like work on the side. But ultimately I decided to pause it to just really focus on my main career, knowing that at some point later, and the later is, 3 years ago, that I would create something that was just mine, but at a point where I had a bit more capacity as a human being, and could kind of have a better idea of how I wanted to focus. So yeah, that was a really wild year. I was very tired all the time.
Yeah, that's real, and I feel like a lot of people don't talk about that. Like even like the transition from going to being a student to being a full-time worker, and then potentially even taking on consulting work, and like what all that means for being an adult and adulting, and time capacity and all these things. So I'm glad that you're able to share that.
Yeah, no, I think it's so important to be transparent about that. And, I was like 25 or something like that. And so that's just a kind of bonkers age to be. And yeah, I was just, it was just a lot. And I think it's okay to take a step back and to kind of take like like a, tactical retreat to be like, this is not the time to be going, guns blazing in multiple ways. What's most important? And definitely, my main career that main job was the most important to focus on. Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. And it's always easier, in my opinion, to like do the work, gain the skills, gain the network connections, and then do it on later, as well as when you have like more security in a lot of different ways in life.
Yeah.
Just makes it a lot less stressful. But just my humble opinion.
Well,
so. Right. So then you worked at the University of Victoria. You had a couple roles here. So you're a program manager, administrative coordinator, and health research officer. How did you come across this? And then what did you do in those roles?
Yeah, so I think, I'm just kind of like a chronically curious person. I have a hard time sticking with one job, honestly, because I just want to do everything. Again, maybe it's the Gemini-ness, or maybe it's just, I find the field of health and just kind of work so interesting. And so, yeah, with those jobs, I can't quite remember how I probably like the job board. A lot of university jobs, they have a pretty decent job board. And yeah, it was a very interesting experience at the University of Victoria. It's a beautiful campus. If you ever want to come up this way, it's honestly, it's like there's a ring road and then there's buildings within it. So it's a very serene, beautiful place to work. And this was pre-pandemic, so we were in the office, 5 days a week kind of thing. When I was working as the administrative coordinator at the Research Center for Religion and Society, it was kind of a different job than what I've had before. In that it was, very administrative, but also working in an area that was not explicitly health related. But I will say in my undergrad, I did half of a minor, so 3 courses in religious studies. So it was not really anything that was on my transcript. But I find, like religion and spirituality and that whole topic so interesting. And it is an aspect of well-being, right? And if you're thinking holistically. And so in that job, we were working we were running like fellowships and kind of research programs with various students, faculty members, as well as, some kind of people who were within, different faith traditions, whether they're clergy or pastors and various folks like that. And so it was such an eye-opening experience. It was the most diverse place in terms of all of the aspects of diversity that you can think of. I learned about religions that I didn't even know existed. We had just such amazing conversations. So even though the job itself was very administrative, I'd say it was one of the bigger kind of mind-expanding jobs I've had. And then the administrative part is also really was really helpful, because every single job or every single workplace, there are administrative aspects. There's budgets, there's this and that, and so kind of getting my hands into the weeds of that has always have really paid off. Like when I work with admin folks now, I have just a better sense of what they're dealing with. And I will say also another piece of that job that's kind of been helpful is I worked a lot with endowment officers, or in development officers. So with donations and stuff, that knowledge has really come in handy, because I'm actually creating my own scholarship right now with the University of British Columbia. So it's not officially out yet, but they said I can kind of speak about it. It'll hopefully be out in the fall. They have to go through Senate and all of that. But essentially, it's an award that will be kind of in my name, and it's for students of the MPH program specifically, who are neurodivergent. That was the kind of area that I really wanted to focus on after working with clients who are neurodivergent. I have the majority of my friends and loved ones are neurodivergent. I'm personally not, and trust me, I've taken all the tests, and it's not something that I currently have, but it's something that I am surrounded by in my work and personal life. And I do see the kind of challenges that can sometimes arise when neurodivergent folks are in an institutional setting. And so I'm super excited about this scholarship, and that job has allowed me to understand the process of developing a scholarship much more than if I hadn't done that job.
That's awesome. And I think it goes back to just how things are so interconnected in our learning and developing as people, and we never know how that administrative or like working with the people in the endowments is going to come back to help you and support build out the scholarship. So I didn't know this was a thing. So like I'd love to hear more about like what does that look like for you to work to create a scholarship.
It's actually really easy. Like if you just have the money and you have a general idea of how you want it to go, like that's kind of all it takes. You can get as involved or as not involved as you want. I've been a bit more hands-on because it's important to me. But basically, every university kind of has their own process. But the one that I'm working with, UBC, the smallest amount that you can put in is basically, $10,000 over 5 years. So it's a $2,000 scholarship over that time. You don't have to put it all down at once. So every year that money kind of gets taken out. And for me at this point in my career, that's financially accessible. As well, I'm kind of I'm trying to make it more sustainable by weaving it into my business. So 10% of every single session goes towards like a fund that will then fund, a portion of the next year, or hopefully at some point the full amount, to make it a bit more sustainable. So yeah, making a scholarship is super easy. Universities will be happy to take your money, and you can put it, towards students. Obviously, that's what I would like, or you can put it towards research as well. So there's lots of different options, and you just have to talk to them. There's a whole team of people that their whole jobs is to do this. So.
Okay, that's cool. Well, I look forward to seeing this scholarship being launched. Fingers
Yeah,
crossed, and seeing that impact as well.
yeah, for sure.
Awesome, awesome. And then after University of Victoria, you moved on to the public health brand at BC Public Service. So BC Public Service, I'm guessing you had quite a few roles here. I will list them out and then you can talk about them however you'd like to speak about it. So you were a policy analyst, population and public health brand, and then director of policy in the gender equity office, senior policy analyst in policing and public safety modernization unit, and then a manager for policy and legislation, policing and public safety modernization.
Yeah, and then recently in March, I took on a role as a senior manager, working still in the policing and security branch, but on a different project. And so, yeah, again, just there's so many opportunities to move around when you're in the BC Public Service. And going back to just my curiosity, I like to kind of follow my curiosities. I tend to work better when I'm interested in something, and so it was great to kind of land in the population public health branch. It was a comfortable space. I was working in sexual health. I'd already done some of that work before, and but it was pretty slow times because most people were focused on COVID. So there just wasn't as much excitement and work as I had hoped. But there was tons going on in the policing side because, again, that was right around, I think it was just immediately after Black Lives Matter kind of protests in obviously the US, as you know, but also in Canada as well. And there was just a real momentum to talk about policing reform, defunding the police, like all of those topics were really in the zeitgeist. And so I was wanting to learn more, and I thought, I wonder if they'll pay me to learn more about this and to hopefully impact some kind of change. And so even though before that, I had no policing background whatsoever. I didn't study criminology, but I came at it from the public health angle, right? Because it very much, especially in the US, it is a public health crisis. And in Canada, it's a little bit different. There are differences and there are similarities, right? Like anything else between our two countries. But I was really interested in kind of working in the policy and legislation side, especially as it relates to kind of mental health. So that was kind of how I got in, was the intersection of mental health and policing was kind of how they hired me. And then it was a really huge project. The province right now is reforming the Police Act. It's a huge project. And so I got to just learn about tons of different aspects of policing, from training to the financial aspects, to governance, to superintendents, like all of these things. But ultimately, I realized a couple years in, I was getting kind of straying too far from the mental health piece. I was fully going into the legislation side, and I've never been interested in being a lawyer. I was working with lawyers, and it's super important work, but it just was a bit too far out of my interest zone. And so an opportunity came up to work in the same branch but on a project looking at the decriminalization of certain illicit drugs, that this exemption to the Controlled Substances Act here in Canada and BC, but also looking at harm reduction, substance use as it relates to policing. So I was like, okay, this is much more up my alley. It brings me back into the kind of public health, health research kind of side of things without wasting or losing all of the knowledge that I gained about policing, because I know now way more than I ever thought I would. And to be honest, it's a great branch. I work with amazing people, really passionate people with very diverse backgrounds. Lots of people with legal backgrounds, some with policing background, and then miscellaneous people like me, public health and public policy and whatnot. And so that's kind of where I am now. I just made the transition. It wasn't a hard transition. Again, I'm still in the same branch, and a lot of the people I work with I already knew. So it's in many ways it's the smallest job change I've ever done, but it's a super dynamic, field. The portfolio is very complex, and so I'm very engaged and very interested in continuing to expand in this role.
And I think it's important just to highlight like the fact that you're saying like, hey, you enjoy this work, you're doing this work, you had no idea about criminology and policing and all these things. And I think like that's important for people to hear, because you don't necessarily have to have the content knowledge. It's more about what are the skill sets that you have that you can bring, and you can always learn the content. And I think that that's something that kind of was highlighted from you sharing that.
Oh, for sure. It's such an important piece, and I think sometimes you can actually bring a fresh perspective if you did if you did study criminology. Obviously, that's an advantage, and there are people that I work with that have that background. But if you come in with a different viewpoint, like public health, or my executive director has a social work background. You just bring different perspectives into the work, and that's super valuable too. And in my hiring roles, I do look for that. Do you have different experiences and different work experiences, life experiences that could complement our team? Because again, diversity, we use this word a lot, but it's also diversity in your kind of educational background, your work background, and your kind of general worldview. We need all of it. There are certain things that if you get everybody in the same room together who are all public health people, you'll miss certain things. That's just how it goes. So
that's important, and brings up another thought in my head is like when people are going into like MPH programs and stuff like that, like just having varied perspectives from people coming in from bachelor's degrees with different things, I think is important, and it really enriches the experience and perspectives that is in the program.
Yeah, for sure.
And you are a career coach and consultant at Sally Yue Lin, and I hope I got your middle name correct.
Yeah.
Awesome. So tell us, you shared a little bit about shifting or starting this work like 3 years ago after starting up consulting as you came out of your MPH. So tell us about that thought process of like maybe starting this back up, and then a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, so to be honest, I don't have time to do any consulting between my main job and the career coaching. That's the bulk of my work. I'm open to kind of doing more consulting work in the future, just depending on capacity. But right now, my focus really is on the career coaching side. And so, I've been doing it for about 3 years. I keep a fairly small roster of clients, mostly just, for two reasons: my own kind of sanity and work-life balance, but also because I want to ensure my services are high quality and that I have availability for the people that I've decided to take on. So, I've worked with so many different clients. I do, video. Majority of my clients are in North America, although I'm starting to kind of get some interest elsewhere, which is making the time zone thing a little bit interesting. And it's just been so much fun. Like I honestly, when I first started, I think I was a bit nervous. It's a new venture, but now I think I've really hit a good stride, and just really enjoying being able to help people in such pivotal moments in their career, meeting interesting people, hearing about their lives and their needs. And I really do think it kind of feeds, like everything kind of feeds into each other, right? It makes me better at my main job, just kind of always having a bit of a pulse on, especially kind of the up and coming generation of professionals as they're kind of in school or coming out of school. What are their concerns? Because I am starting to kind of get into more leadership roles within my main job. But yeah, I think in terms of the career coaching piece, I'm honestly, like, just to be totally candid, like winging it in terms of my like business plan. I don't really have a plan. I'm just seeing what is interesting to me. What are the client needs? What do I have capacity for? And just trying to kind of balance all of those things. So in terms of the consulting piece, I'm super interested in it, and I think there's a lot of potential for me to go in that way in the future with the right kind of contracts. But I'm not actively seeking that out because pretty maxed out, doing a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, and once again, that's a reality that many of us like don't think about, or we idolize. Okay, I'm going to work a full-time job and do consulting, and it takes up a lot of time. It takes up a lot of time, a lot of energy. So it really is like being cognizant of like what is your workload. Because as we know, well, at least in the public health workforce in the US, I'd imagine that similarly in Canada, there are high rates of burnout and a lot of other mental health challenges that come. So really approaching things in a way that is, I guess, you first is important.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Maybe what has been the most joyous thing that you've gotten from being a career coach?
When people get the job that they want, right? It's both joyous and kind of bittersweet. There's been a few clients where we start working, we're kind of building good momentum, and they're obviously applying for jobs and such, and then they get the job, and then I'm so happy for them, but I don't get to see them anymore because that was kind of what they were there for. But I know personally, through the many jobs I've had, the joy of receiving that offer letter, getting that first paycheck, being able to when you do get paid, like to buy the thing that you want, or to pay off the loan, or to, take your partner out for a good meal, or take your mom out for, whatever, like nothing beats that feeling. And so I get a lot of joy from other people. It sometimes even, I think it keeps me in check to not keep applying for jobs where I'm like, I can get that joy from other people getting new jobs. And I can just stick with my main job because it's just so intoxicating. I think it just, I'm just happy for my clients when they get what they want. And sometimes it's not so straightforward. It's not like getting the job, but it's getting to a place of clarity of like, right, I do want to switch careers, or no, you know what, I have it pretty good. Like, this isn't as bad as I thought. Like, getting that growth and that kind of clarity is huge. So I love that.
Love that for you. And then before we move on to the Furious Five, I would like to ask, where can people connect with you, and where would you like to see yourself in the future?
Yeah, so people can connect with me on LinkedIn. You can send me a DM, or if you wanted to work together, you can also find out more about me and my career coaching service at my website, which is www.sallyyue, so Yue Lin.com. And in terms of my future, I'm really committed to growing as a public servant, especially in my current role, as I mentioned, because the issues that I'm working on are very close to my heart. Unfortunately, the toxic drug crisis has impacted all of us here in BC, and I know in the States as well. So it's a super impactful space to be working in. So I'd like to keep doing that. And in terms of my career coaching, like I said, I'm kind of figuring that out, expanding my services while ensuring I maintain that quality, and just trying new things. It's a new skill for me too, the business side of things. And so I'm excited to get to experiment with that while having the security of my salaried pension job. It's not as big of a risk as if I were to do it full time. And I have tons of other ideas. I have this, massive list going in my Google Docs for my business, but it's really a matter of timing and balancing it with the other career and personal goals that I have. I briefly toyed with the idea of a podcast as well, but just too much right now. And so I'm just happy to be on other people's podcasts. So yeah, really just stay tuned. I also have no idea how this is all going to go, but knowing myself and looking back at my career, it's going to be interesting.
Well, I'm rooting for you and hoping that you're able to find your way. But love the work that you're doing, and look forward to following along on the journey.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And everything will be linked below or in the show notes for anyone that's interested in checking that out. So moving on to the Furious Five, the 5 questions that I ask all guests. Number 1, what advice would you give to a student trying to pursue a career in public health?
Yeah, so my main advice would be to really think about what work experiences and credentials do you actually need for the type of work that you want to do before you invest too much time or money. So as I kind of mentioned when you were asking what is public health to me, there's so many different ways to work in public health, and not all of them require, multiple years of higher education. Sometimes the work and life experience is much more valuable, and you can always pursue that advanced education or further, credentials training later. Especially, and this is something I wish I knew, you can sometimes get your employer to pay for all or part of it. So I would say, work with a career coach, maybe me, maybe someone else, to figure this out, to be like, what do you actually need before you're like, oh, I want to work in public health. I must need a master's in public health, which is financially potentially cost prohibitive, especially in the States.
That is true. And I think that's important. Work like backwards from understanding where you want to be and seeing what you have to do, so you don't do unnecessary things. So I appreciate that. Number 2, if you're talking to someone wanting to get into your position, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, so I think in terms of my kind of public service position, working in government, I'd say the main thing is, get your foot in the door and apply for any job in the public service that you're interested in. And once you're in, it's fairly easy and sometimes even encouraged to move around. And once you're an internal candidate, you can keep advancing your career and skill set by just trying out different teams, different ministries, different portfolios. So yeah, it really does help to be an internal candidate and to have that work experience. And in terms of my career coaching service, I would encourage people, if you want to be a career coach or do something similar, to get involved with your alumni career service, which is what I kind of did, volunteering to review resumes, doing interview prep, and just kind of seeing if this is something that you even like doing. Another thing to do, and I think this is a good thing to do even if you don't want to be a career coach, just as like a community service thing, is to just take on mentees or apply to be a mentor in a specific programs. A lot of organizations, have something like this. And again, it's a way to build up your skills, see if it's something you enjoy before you do it more. And honestly, you get a lot out of it too, right? Like any sort of volunteering, you learn a lot from the mentees as well if you're a mentor.
Number 3, what's something you're working on improving in your life right now?
So not really work related, but I'm trying to get back into running. I signed up for a 10K race this October, so I'm slowly training to be able to run that distance comfortably. I'm trying to reframe my relationship to running because I kind of overdid it in my 20s. There was that one year, right, when I was 25 doing all the things. I also accidentally unintentionally sort of ran a marathon during that year. So you can just kind of see how chaotic my life was. I was trying to cope with, a lot of mental health stuff through running. It was before I kind of got into therapy. It's much better to kind of go into therapy to address those things and run a marathon. And so that kind of killed it for me. Like running the marathon, I was like, this sucks. Really proud of myself, but it was just too much. And now I'm basically trying to cut down the distance and just reframe my relationship. It's a great way to be active and to meet people, to socialize, especially in the city, Vancouver. Everyone's like running or biking or doing all those things. So yeah, wish me luck with this 10K, that I don't take it too seriously.
Well, good luck and don't take it too seriously.
Thanks.
You're welcome. And then number 4, professionally, do you recommend anything?
Yeah, so huge reader, constantly reading books, and especially ones that are relevant for my career coaching business. And same with podcasts. I love of a running list of books and podcasts actually up on my website. under free resources. So that could be another link that you can link there, and really encourage people to check that out, because basically I use it as like a public facing notes app, that's a little bit better organized than my actual notes app, where whenever I read a cool book or listen to a great podcast episode, I throw it up there, for me to keep track, for people to access for free. And also, sometimes I'll refer my clients to it to say like, oh, this particular book, might be something that you want to look into.
I like that. I probably have to start doing something similar to that at some point as well. But like that a lot. Okay. And then last but not least, if there was one piece of advice you'd give to your younger self, what would that be?
Yeah, so I think professionally, I would have told myself to work a few more years before maybe even doing grad school, and also undergrad as well, probably, because it would have allowed me to earn money while I figured out what I wanted to do, as opposed to spend money to figure out what I wanted to do. Again, no regrets, but it's an option that I've seen other people take now, that I've worked for a little while, and so. Would have been good to kind of have had that perspective. It felt like such a rush at the time. And then I think, just sharing a bit personally, I would have told myself to just, ask the girl that I had a crush on out. I kind of came into my sexuality slightly later in life, not super late, but in my late 20s. And I just wish I had the courage to kind of embrace that aspect of myself as a teenager. I think, it's something that, I'm figuring out now, and again, no regrets. But with life experience and time and meeting, young people who are taking steps professionally. Like I have some clients that I work with who are in their undergrad, and I'm just so amazed. I'm like, I didn't even know what a career coach was in undergrad, and are just really embracing every aspect of their identity at a much younger age than when I did. I'm just so impressed.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate the transparency. I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation today, Sally, and hearing about your career journey as well as the insights that you shared. So I greatly appreciate it. I'm looking forward to seeing all the great things that you do in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was really fun. It was a real retrospective. It got me kind of sentimental, actually, thinking about all the different jobs and all the amazing people I've worked with. And yeah, I'm excited too. I have no idea what's to come, but hopefully good things.
Yes, always good things. Once again, thank you again. Housekeeping items, everyone. Thank you all so much for listening or watching this. If you've made it this far, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave a 5-star review and share this with a friend who gets some value with it. I will see you all next week. Peace, everyone.
Bye.